抵抗入れなくてもつきますね。
Personal conduct policy, but not everyone is happy about it. The Players Union issued a statement yesterday after NFL players approved the policy, saying they should have been able to collectively bargain over such an important issue. The new policy follows the headlines this season, the way the league handled running backs Ray Rice and Adrian Peterson. Rice, who knocked his then-fiancée unconscious in a casino elevator. Peterson used a switch to punish his young son. Essentially, the new policy means NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell will not be both judge and jury. He defended the policy after yesterday's vote.
This is the product of consultation with more than 150 experts on domestic violence, sexual assault, and violent crime. The policy is comprehensive, it is strong, it is tough.
Mike Pesca here, now a sports analyst and host of the podcast, The Gist at Slate.com, is here. So, Mike, who will be judge and jury if not Goodell?
Well, he's going to need an outside expert. He will select the expert. The expert is said to have credentials in the field of law enforcement. And one is to presume that the expert will not break with what Roger Goodell has been, which is a very tough justice. I mean, that's why the NFL has created this policy. It wasn't really it was created in light of the Ray Rice situation. It wasn't really created because sometimes they were too tough and sometimes they were too lenient. It was created because in this one case they were too lenient, and the NFL sees itself, and Roger Goodell certainly sees his role as being as tough a punisher as he can in all the situations that he can.
Well, presumably this will bring more transparency, because the other aspect of Roger Goodell handling the whole thing is that nobody really knows what goes on.
Right, and so there are more clearly delineated penalties. So one of the problems, a bit of a conundrum, was, well, how do we punish these guys when the criminal justice system, in the case of Ray Rice, had a suspended sentence, same thing with the case of, or Adrian Peterson, similarly, no jail time. And so he consulted with NYPD Commissioner Bill Bratton, he consulted with former LAPD Commissioner Bernard Parks, he consulted with all these women's groups and Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and part of this was he even consulted with the NFL Players Association, which is odd to lump them in with all these outsiders, but that's fine. And so they decided that even if the law doesn't come down with a punishment, or if justice drags its feet, that the NFL can come out with some extrajudicial punishment. But he's there, he's the appeals process, he's appointing whoever the judge, jury, and executioner will be. We're not going to have a real break from a sense of pretty tough justice that the NFL has endorsed so far.
Because can't he also decide not to appoint somebody?
Well, he is, of course, written himself, and they've written the league every bit of latitude. So even though they have these guidelines, most of them have this asterisk that says, or whatever the NFL deems important. The words officially, a press release, called this robust, thorough, and formal. And Roger Goodell called it clear, formal, consistent, and transparent. It is notable to me that the word formal appears in both those lists, because that's what the NFL loves. They love formalities. Their entire league is rigid. They will find someone for having the wrong color shoelaces, and they want a feel better when they're buttressed by a formal process. And what they always do is they think about the last thing, like this was a huge case, and ESPN even revealed this week that some of the things that Roger Goodell claimed, like the office had requested from Atlantic City prosecutors, tape of Ray Rice beating his wife, that actually was not true. But they're addressing the last thing. And what about the new thing that comes down the line? They are rigid, they are formal. I don't know if they are flexible and wise, but those don't seem to be ideals that the NFL wants. They'd rather just embrace formality.
Mike Pesca, host of the daily podcast, The Gist, and here now sports analyst. We'll keep an eye on this one. Mike, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
It's here now. Funding for Here and Now comes from MathWorks, creators of MATLAB and Simulate technical computing software. MathWorks, accelerating the pace of engineering and science. Learn more at mathworks.com. You're listening to NPR Berlin, 104.1 FM, and streaming at nprberlin.de.
When you think about contributing to this station, you've got an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other.
Becoming a sustaining member of this radio station will make you feel great.
The only reason people give money is to get those tote bags.
The greatest gift is the soul snuggles you get from supporting something you love.
Hey, kid, you want a tote bag? I got a guy who can get you a sweet tote bag. His name's Brody. His van's parked behind the gas station.
Don't do it for the premium. Donate because it makes you feel awesome.
You want commuter mugs? I got a commuter mug guy.
Become a sustaining member of this station today. And thanks.
It's here and now. We've been looking at different questions raised by that Senate report on CIA interrogation techniques, a report that concluded the practices like waterboarding were worse than previously thought and didn't provide any actionable intelligence. That may have come as a surprise to viewers of popular TV shows like 24 and Homeland.
Where's Hakani? I don't know. Turn around.
With the character Quinn in Homeland, fictional torture works. And what's more, a lot of viewers love it, even those who cringe at the real-life torture. So are they, we, then, also somehow culpable? Eric Kleinenberg is professor of sociology and director of the Institute for Public Knowledge at New York University. So, Eric, there's not total outrage at the Senate report. We know that. We're hearing from 9/11 families, for instance, who are applauding the CIA's tactics. But how do we square those who condemn the real CIA but lap up the fictional one on TV?
Well, we live in a time of anxiety still, and especially we did after September 11th. We were all aware that the American government and the intelligence agencies we have were doing everything possible to extract information from people who we considered a threat. There was a kind of hunger in the many American communities to exact some revenge as well. So when 24 came out, those scenes of torture in which there was a kind of ticking time bomb scenario where the person being tortured had information which, if we could get, could save lives. Those were almost cathartic.
Well, let's listen to a scene from 24, and this is the show in which Jack Bauer, played by Kiefer Sutherland, always uses torture to force information. In this scene, in the 7th season, he defends the use of torture before a Senate committee, probably not unlike the one that in reality just released this report. Let's listen.
Did you torture Mr. Haddad? According to the definition set forth by the Geneva Convention, yes, I did. Ibrahim Haddad had targeted a bus carrying 45 people, 10 of which were children. The truth, Senator, is I stopped that attack from happening. By torturing Mr. Haddad. By doing what I deem necessary to protect innocent lives.
Look, there's a lot going on in that scene, one of which is this idea that many Americans hold that the United States should somehow be above the law, or that international conventions and treaties aren't really good for Americans after September 11th. I think a lot of people felt what Jack Bauer felt as well.
Of course, the Senate report concluded that the work of real-life agents did not provide actionable evidence, but here we see this heroic Jack Bauer getting all the information he needs. John Yoo is the former Justice Department lawyer under John Ashcroft during the Bush administration, who wrote the now infamous torture memo that many CIA officials are saying it gave them permission to use torture. In his book, War by Other Means, he cited Jack Bauer. He said, what if, as the popular Fox television program 24 recently portrayed, a high-level terrorist leader is caught who knows the location of a nuclear weapon? Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia also cited Jack Bauer. He said, Jack Bauer saved Los Angeles. Are you going to convict Jack Bauer? So it all becomes part of this endless loop feeding back on itself, convincing us that torture works.
I think one of the things that's so powerful about the Hollywood depictions of torture is that they've become our only way to process the human and moral features of these situations. It's one thing to read newspaper articles, but when we have characters like Jack Bauer and enemies we can see, and we watch the scenes unfold, that gives us something to talk about with our spouses and family members and coworkers and friends. So that's why I guess I'm not all that surprised to know that Supreme Court justices and policymakers at the highest level are citing 24 rather than real cases.
Well, scholars actually have a phrase for what we're hearing, what scholars call a necessity doctrine, that there was a necessity for it. But I want to ask you as a sociologist, is there a difference between the